Who here works at a foundation or sits on the board of a foundation? All right, fair number of people. So what I have to share might resonate more with you all. I'm going to start talking a little bit about the Better Way Foundation, and I think that will provide some really good context. I mentioned earlier in my intro as a board member that 100% of our grant making supports Indigenous communities. It's domestic in the United States. And my sort of essential fundamental question is, how, as a grant-making institution, do we be a better partner to our grantee organizations? So the Better Way Foundation is a private Catholic family foundation from the Roundhorse family. Jeff from the family is here. He's on my investment committee. Hopefully you'll agree with what I share about our journey with impact investing. If not, feel free to raise your hand and cut me off. And we do things pretty differently. So just the fact that we 100% of our grant making supports Indigenous communities is pretty unique, whether that's a Catholic family foundation or not. And there's very few of those organizations in the United States. In fact, less than 0.5% of philanthropic dollars in the United States actually make their way to support Indigenous communities. That's less than 0.5%. We also do 9-year partnerships. So we do a 1-year planning grant as an organization, and then we commit to 8 years of funding for our grantee partners. We also have a strong blend of community and family on the board. This year I have 7 community members and 3 family members. And then in terms of impact investing, we have shifted so far about 40% of our assets over to impact investments. And our goal is 100%. It'll take us another 8 or 9 years to get there, but we're committed. Right, Jeff? Yeah, all right, okay, great. So we've learned a lot over the years working with Indigenous communities. This work goes back about 15, 16 years, but it's only been more recently that we've been going deeper and deeper working with Indigenous communities. Most of our grant making is in the early childhood development space. And then we also do some grant making with former Catholic boarding schools that are committed to truth and healing. We'll help with language revitalization work in those schools, the hiring and the support, the development, retention of Indigenous educators in those schools, truth and healing with the broader community and whatnot. And I think what really stands out to us, at least for me, working with Indigenous communities and working alongside them and learning from them over the years is just the pattern of disinvestment that goes back generations and decades and still exists today. I mentioned that less than 0.5% of philanthropic dollars make their way to Indigenous communities. We also see how so much is working with Indigenous communities. There are a lot of bright spots, a lot of proof points that you often hear the word like resiliency with Indigenous communities. And we see that languages are being revitalized, birth rates are up, high school graduation rates are improving, home ownership among many Indigenous communities in the United States is up. So there's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of things that are working, but still when we read about and we hear firsthand from our grantee partners about the disinvestment, it really begs this question about how can we be a better partner? So the board of the foundation had approved a new IPS right before they hired me in 2022. And a funny story is that when I went in for my first in-person interview, the chair of the investment committee had asked for my philosophy on impact investing. But impact investing was not in the position description, it was not on the website. And I had to say, I don't know what that is. But if you can enlighten me, I will talk to you about how I will get up to speed. And Patrice Kunish had said that was the right answer. So we've learned a lot, and I think that there are 3 things that I want to touch on with impact investing at the Better Way Foundation. And I'll talk a little bit about like our journey and our path, but I want to sort of mention like getting the right people in place. It's progress over perfection, and it's a commitment to learning. And so with the people, what they got from me was someone who was really interested, who was really passionate about it, but I had a learning curve, but I had the interest and the passion. I would say that there's a little bit, if I'm being really candid, there was a little bit of resistance from at least one member of the family office. And we had to work through that. And over time, when that person transitioned out of their role, we were able to hire someone new. And I inserted myself into the hiring process. I wanted to look at the position description and make sure that the position description really elevated impact investing. And then I inserted myself into the interviewing process, and I wanted to interview the finalists and then give my 2 cents and chime in on that. Also making sure that really high caliber people and expertise around impact investing sitting on the investment committee. And how do we bring in some of that expertise from broader communities? progress over perfection. Like we have made mistakes as a foundation, and we continue to learn, and we continue to keep trying. We started our work by issuing program-related investments, all of which into native CDFIs, and we continue to do that. We have shifted all of our cash over to native-owned banks. We have made some alternative investments that are in alignment with our new IPS. We're using Apereo for our screening for equities. Those are some of like the sort of like early wins that we've had with impact investing, and those efforts got us to the 40%. And then I personally feel like things, Jeff and I were just talking about this a little bit with Molly Harmon, who's joining my board. Shout out to Molly. And maybe we'll sit on my investment committee. But I felt like once we got into like maybe the end of 2023, 2024, like things started to slow down a little bit. We are sort of heavily weighted with alternatives in our portfolio, and that just takes longer to see shifts in that space. So just a longer runway with getting to 100%, and but also doing more work to bring in the chief investment officer from the family office into our investment committee for guidance, support, to make sure there's alignment. And then also entering into contract with a sourcing vendor to help with some of the sourcing has been really helpful. And as we look forward to the future, we're aiming to do 1 to 2 new alternative investments a year. We'll continue to do more program-related investments. And really, I think just like doing more around how do we measure the social impact of the investments that we're making. So, in short, I think it's, how am I doing on time, Felipe? Wrap it up? All right. In short, I think getting the right people on board, it's trying some things, and again, let progress outweigh the perfection, and a commitment to learning and how do you iterate, how do you refine your IPS, and just keep moving forward. So thank you.
Thanks.